We're here on NJ Toty News. He's Will.
And he's Raul. And today we're going to talk about science news. Isn't that right, Raul?
Yes, it is, Will. And like you said, we're going to be talking about fascinating science news. I love this kind of news.
I bet I would find it fascinating and love it too. But I don't know what we're talking about. Can you fill me in, Raul?
Gladly. Today we're going to be talking about volcanoes, earthquake, and all good stuff. Help you, Will?
Yes, it does. Thanks, Raul. At NTN News, today we're going to talk about some warnings and some weather with Quartz. To you, Quartz!
So, Raul, awesome introduction. Well, as Will said, I'm Quartz, but my actual name is Courtney. There seems to be some crazy stuff going around in the USA and other parts of the world, like earthquakes, aftershocks, and volcanic eruptions. All that stuff. So, here's a map of the United States. As you can see, there was a big earthquake in California that will be coming this way.
Beware! Forget to beware of aftershocks, also that the volcano erupted.
I was getting to that. Well, as I was saying before, I was interrupted by a certain someone. This was a warning because there are potential aftershocks that might affect Ohio, Pennsylvania, and here, New Jersey. So if you feel the ground shaking, keep in mind of that. There also was a recent...
Hey, Quartz! Don't forget to talk about that volcano. It's quite an important piece of information.
I was getting to that. This is my job. I'm a professional. I got this. Like I was going to say, there was a volcanic eruption from Mount Nyiragongo in Africa. We're going to get into that a little more with Maya and the witness, so stay tuned for that. But then again, where will you go? And yes, it's not popular. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about those things. I have two people that are also on this news station. You all know them, you all love them. It's Will and Raul.
Hello again!
Hey, guys! Again.
So guys, you said that you would like to learn more about science news. Well, this is a segment that you would want to be in if you want to learn more stuff about that.
I actually already know a lot about this stuff. Like the Cinder Cone volcano have lava, and that they have high viscosity in silica. Also about earthquakes like P waves, S waves, surface waves. P waves are the primary wave that comes first, and S waves are it's like secondary waves, and they have the power to be more effective than P waves. And surface waves are those waves, but when they reach the surface.
I didn't know some of that, but don't underestimate it. I know quite a bit about volcanoes. Like lava, it's just magma that reaches the air. And viscosity in silica is the friction that affects how thick or thin something is. I also know that AA creates pumice, and pahoehoe creates obsidian. Pumice is this light rock that is this dusky white color that might remind you of coral. Obsidian is a black shiny rock that has sharp edges and may look broken in some areas. The magma chamber is within the volcano, and it's where all magma is stored and where all the pressure builds up as well. Pressure is, of course, pressing up against an area. The volcanic neck is when the magma within the pipe cools down and hardens. The pipe is a big tube where all the magma comes up to the vent, becomes lava, then explodes.
Wow, you do know your stuff when it comes to volcanoes, when I can be completely clueless on this kind of stuff. That's why was a lot of knowledge about volcanoes. And you said that you didn't know this kind of news. You're natural. Well, it appears that all the time that we have is gone on weather and friends with Corey.
Aw man, I was having fun learning about volcanoes.
Same here, Raul. Same here. Well, now to our next segment with our friend, Will, interviewing Dr. Seth Teeter. We're going to talk about recent earthquake in Nepal. Stay tuned and goodbye. To you, Will.
Hey! Yes, we have Dr. Raul Wall from Brazil, the world's latest expert in the field of plate tectonics.
Obrigado pela introdução. Eu acabei de sair do Brasil, onde eu estava numa conferência de vulcões. Oh, sorry, it was a long flight.
No problem. We are honored to have you here today. Doctor, exactly what was the study of plate tectonics?
Oh, it was a theory developed by J. Tuzo Wilson. Simply put, it is a theory that deals with the movement of Earth's plate. It states that the pieces of Earth are constantly moving in slow motion.
Does this movement happen during a certain time of year?
No, there's constant movement. Even as we speak, this is driven by something called convection currents. We will talk about that a little later.
I don't feel any movement.
That's because the movement is taking place very slowly.
Fascinating, Doctor. Can you tell us some more about the forces at work with plate tectonics?
Sure, in order to do this, we have to start by discussing the layers of the Earth. They include the crust, mantle, and core. Within the core, there are two sub-layers, the inner core and the outer core. Let's take a look at the diagram. Shows here. So, the crust is the top. The crust is the top layer of the Earth. It is made up of land and landforms like mountains, soils, and rocks, as well as the water.
Is there anything else we should know about the crust?
Just that the Earth is also contains ocean crust and continental crust. Have you ever heard of granite?
Yes, my kitchen counters at home are granite.
Well, that is part of the continental crust. The continental crust is made up of less dense rock. Then you have the oceanic crust. This is the crust found beneath the ocean. It is made up of more dense rock like basalt.
You mentioned something about the mantle?
Yes. The mantle is the layer of the Earth that contains hot rock. The deeper you travel into the mantle, the hotter it becomes. And pressure increases. Within the mantle, the sections called the lithospheric and the asthenosphere. And the lithospheric is the rigid layer of rock in the upper part of the mantle. It is also in the lower part of the crust. Below the lithospheric is the asthenosphere. It is made up of weak rock.
Doctor, you sure know your stuff. Thanks. Can you tell us about the last layer of Earth?
Sure, this will be brief because we have other things to discuss. The core represents about a third of the Earth's mass, but only 15% of Earth's volume. The outer core is like a thick liquid and consists of molten metal. It surrounds the inner core, which is dense ball containing the solid mantle.
How interesting. Doctor, are you nervous? You seem to be sweating.
Ooh, absolutely not. It is the heat transfer from the sun. As you might say, the sun's radiations, that makes me sweat. Speaking of which, I think it's time to shift topic to the heat transfer. Remember, when I spoke to you earlier about convection currents and their role with plate tectonics?
Yep.
Let's further discuss that. There are three types of heat transfer: radiation, conduction, and convection. Radiation is the transfer of energy through empty space. This is like when the heat radiates from the sun. Conduction is when heat is transferred through an object. And have you ever accidentally touched a spoon sitting on a pan of heated water?
Yes, I can still remember the pain that I felt.
Conduction occurred because the heat particles from the pan transferred to the spoon.
So interesting.
Convection is the third and final type of the heat transfer. It is the transfer in heat caused by the movement of heated fluid. For example, if you place cold water in the pan and heat it on the stove, it would actually eventually become hot. The process at work that causes the water to become hot is convection. As the particle of water begin to heat, the water at the bottom becomes hot first. But you still have cold water on top of the pan, waiting to become heated. You also find that the density of the fluid also changes as a result of heat. Density measures the amount of mass in the space that the object takes up. This is because the heat makes the particle move faster and spread out. A convection current is a type of flow. It is capable of transferring heat within a fluid. If there were no heat, convection currents would not exist.
Very interesting, Dr. Wald. You show deep and advanced understanding of this topic. But what does all this have to do with what we were discussing earlier?
Oh yes, how could you forget? How could I forget? You see, convection currents flow throughout the asthenosphere, making them relevant to our topic of discussion. They cause the inner core to spin at a slightly faster rate and produces Earth's magnetic field.
Oh, Doctor, we just got a message from one of our viewers.
What is it?
He says he wants to know more about the theory of continental drift and how it is tied to plate tectonics.
Good question. This theory deals with the movement of drifting of continents. Wagner, the scientist who came up with this theory, did not realize that the continents were drifting because of the actions of the Earth's related of plate tectonics.
Cool. What other information do you have to share on this topic?
Oh, Wagner realized that the Earth today looked different than it did millions of years ago. He based on a conclusion of the study of fossils, land features, and climate. For example, he found the landforms of South America and Africa matched like pieces of puzzles. This is an example of how he concluded that these two continents must have been one landform, but somehow it drifted apart.
Doctor, you had me at the edge of my seat.
Wagner concluded that all of the Earth was joined together at one point. There was no separation by oceans. He called this Pangea.
Is there anything else that you need to discuss?
Just a few more things that are related to plate tectonics. Harry Hess was another famous scientist who worked in this field. He found that the seafloor was continually expanding because of hardened magma. In the mid-ocean ridge, he related seafloor spreading to the movement of Earth's scientists.
What is the mid-ocean ridge?
It is the longest mountain range in the world and is located under the water. It was mapped in the 1900s with the use of sonar. Sonar is a device that sends sound waves through the ocean and looks at how long it takes from them to return.
Cool. Wouldn't it be great if you could climb the underwater mountains?
Sure, if you don't mind getting burned by the lava found in the mid-ocean ridge.
Dr. Raoul, you mentioned seafloor spreading. Could you tell me more about that?
Sure. When the mid-ocean ridge releases lava, it cools, hardens, and pushes older rocks aside. This process continuously adds new material to the ocean floor. There are three types of evidence that proves the theory of seafloor spreading. There are evidence from the molten material, magnetic stripes, and drying samples.
Very interesting.
Finally, we have the topics of deep ocean trenches, subductions, faults, and plate boundaries. A deep ocean trench is a canyon that lies deep underwater and forms an area where ocean crust bends down. Subduction takes place in the deep ocean trench. It occurs when the ocean floor sinks beneath the trench and returns to the mantle. After it is released, convection currents cause new crust to slowly move towards the trench and cycle continues. Lastly, there are plate boundaries and faults. Plate boundaries are formed at a plate edge and can extend deep into the lithosphere.
And faults?
Faults form along plate boundaries. They're a break in the crust in which rock slides past one another. There are three types of plate boundaries. There are transform, divergent, and convergent boundaries. Transform boundaries occur when two plates slip past one another and move in opposite directions. Earthquakes often occur along these boundaries. Seismic waves are vibrations produced by earthquakes. Divergent boundaries can form when two plates pull away from one another. They can be found on land or in the ocean. They are frequently found along mid-ocean ridges. A rift valley is a valley that develops along a divergent boundary. They are usually very deep. The convergent boundary is the third type of boundary. It occurs when two plates merge together.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. Ciao. Obrigado.
We have a leading expert in the study of earthquakes, Seth Jenner. He just flown here from Nepal, where he was assessing the damage that resulted from the recent earthquake there. Hello, Dr. Jenner. You can call me Dr. Seth Will. Can you explain to us what's happening in Nepal?
Nepal experienced a major earthquake that resulted in the death of thousands of people. It measured 7.8 on the moment magnitude scale, with 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. This was a pretty serious earthquake. This is a map of Nepal, the country where the earthquake took place.
Doctor, can you explain to our viewers what causes an earthquake?
Certainly. An earthquake is caused by the buildup of stress in a fault. When enough stress builds up, it is released, causing an earthquake. Stress is a force that is capable of changing the shape or volume of rock.
Is there just one type of stress?
No, there are 3 types of stress: tension, compression, and shearing. Tension is a stress force that stretches rock, making it thinner in the middle. Compression is a stress force that continues to squeeze rock until it folds or breaks. Finally, shearing is the stress force that causes rock to move in opposite directions.
That's interesting information, Doctor. Now, you also mentioned something about faults. Could you explain that in further detail?
Sure. A fault is caused by tension in the Earth's crust. The tension pulls apart rock and forms a normal fault. It is composed of two parts, the hanging wall and the footwall.
Could you further describe those parts?
Certainly. The hanging wall is the upward block in the fault, and the downward part is the footwall. In a normal fault, the hanging wall is the block of rock located above the fault. It slides downward on a diagonal. The footwall is the block below the fault that moves upward at an angle. Like a normal fault, a reverse fault also has a hanging wall and a footwall. However, they both move in opposite directions. Therefore, the hanging wall moves upward and the footwall downward.
You also mentioned a strike-slip fault.
Oh yes, strike-slip faults are formed in areas where plates move past one another. The fault contains two blocks that slide past each other. Unlike reverse and normal faults, the blocks slip past each other while barely moving up or down.
Doctor, could you tell us about the devices that are used to monitor these faults?
Yep, scientists use devices to detect the buildup of stress along a fault. Some of these devices are tiltmeters, laser ranging devices, GPS satellites, and creep meters. Tiltmeters measure the tilting or raising of the ground. You know, tilted land is a sign that something may... Tiltmeters measure the tilting or raising of the ground. You know, tilted land is a sign that there may be something going on underground. A tiltmeter is two bulbs that are filled with liquid and connected by a hollow stem. It is similar to a carpenter's level.
You mean like this thing?
Yes, what are you doing with a carpenter's level in your studio? Laser ranging devices use a laser to detect horizontal fault movements, while GPS satellites measure horizontal movements and changes in elevation. But it uses satellites and not lasers. Finally, a device called a creep meter is also used.
A creep meter? Does that measure how scary an earthquake is?
Something like that. It is simply a wire stretched across the ground to measure fault movement. I hear
that the earthquake in Nepal produced some pretty large folds. Could you further explain folds to our viewers?
a fold is caused by the stress force of compression. Compression squeezes rock and causes it to bend, creating a fold.
There seems to be three types of everything. 3 types of stress, 3 types of faults, and are there 3 types of folds too?
No, not in this case. There are actually only 2 types of folds. They are anticlines and synclines. Anticlines are rocks that bend up in an upward motion and cause an arch shape to form. Synclines are just the opposite. They bend in a downward motion, causing the valley to form. A common example of folds are the Appalachian Mountains in Pennsylvania.
Very interesting, Doctor. Oh, we just received a tweet from one of our viewers. They want to know what a plateau is and how they are formed.
That's a good question. But there's not just one answer. Well, a plateau is a large piece of flat land that has been lifted very high above the ground. One way a plateau forms is when forces within the crust push a large flat rock so that it moves upward.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Doctor. Could you please tell us a bit about seismic waves?
Seismic waves are vibrations produced by earthquakes. They transfer energy so that it moves away from the focus, through the ground, and onto the surface. There are 3 types of seismic waves. There are P waves, S waves, and surface waves.
Could you further explain the 3 types of waves?
Of course. The focus releases P waves and S waves. P or primary waves are the first to reach the surface. They make the ground compress and expand, much like the movement of an accordion. S or secondary waves reach the surface after primary waves. They move side to side and up and down. Finally, there are surface waves. Surface waves fit their name exactly. They are waves that form at the surface. They are produced when P and S waves reach the surface. Surface waves are capable of causing causing dangerous ground movements.
We just received another tweet. This person wants to know how scientists record seismic waves.
They do this with a device called a seismograph. This is how, in seismographs, a seismograph is a pin that sits atop a drum. The drum is always in motion. The seismograph's base is attached to the ground. When the ground shakes, the pin moves up and down against the drum. The seismograph measures how far the pin moves from its original position. This shows how strong or weak the earthquake is. The record of seismic waves produced by a seismograph is called a seismogram. Seismograms look like a group of zigzag lines.
Doctor, you mentioned earlier that the earthquake in Nepal is measured 7.8, correct? Can you tell us how earthquakes are measured?
Sure. There are several ways to measure an earthquake. They can be measured using the Marcelli scale, the Richter scale, and the moment magnitude scale.
Can you describe each of them for us?
No problem. The Marcelli scale is used to determine the amount of damage in a particular location. In other words, it can't be used to tell us the amount of damage caused by the entire earthquake. It can only tell us the damage caused by an earthquake at a particular location. Therefore, it has limited use. Then, next, there's the Richter scale. It is the best known of the three.
Yeah, I thought that was the only device that scientists used.
That's because it's the only scale that's mentioned on TV. In fact, did you know it can only be used to measure small areas? In other words, it could not measure the strength of the earthquake that hit Nepal. But the most comprehensive scale available to seismologists is the moment magnitude scale. It is capable of measuring any type of earthquake, whether it be nearby, far away, large, or small.
Doctor, I just have a few more questions to ask while we are on the subject of earthquakes.
Okay. That's what I'm here for. Let's go.
Dr. Seth, earthquakes start underground, right?
Yes. Earthquakes start at the point underground called the focus. This is where you find rock underground that is under stress. When the rock breaks, a release of stress triggers the earthquake. Right above the focus is an area called the epicenter. It is usually the place where the greatest damage occurs.
Finally, can you please tell us about the type of damage caused by earthquakes?
The three things that can happen following an earthquake are liquefaction, aftershocks, and tsunamis. As you know, a lot of shaking occurs during an earthquake. This shaking causes the soil to become soft, loose, muddy, and liquefied. The earth becomes damaged because liquefaction causes it to crack. Next, there are aftershocks. They are smaller earthquakes that follow larger ones.
Are they like mini earthquakes?
Yes, and can sometimes be just as dangerous. Finally, there's the often mentioned tsunami. A tsunami is a large wave produced by plate movement and water that is displaced by an earthquake.
Thanks, Doctor. This was a thought-provoking and earth-shaking interview.
Wow, that's good to know. Now, hello everyone, I'm Maya, a volcanologist researching a recent volcanic eruption. I have Coco here to give us some insight on one of the events that the meteorologist Quartz told us of earlier. She witnessed the volcanic eruption of Mount Nyiragongo. Now, before we begin, since you're kind of young, do you want me to explain what a volcano is?
Oh, yeah, I know. It's a deadly cone thingy that burns people to death by shooting out ketchup.
No, not really. A volcano is a large landmass that is made up on top of a hotspot and about to list that into Earth's crust. A hotspot is an area where material within the mantle rises, then melts, causing magma to form. If a batholith is pushed up, then it forms a dome mountain. Lava plateaus are lava that cools and makes high, elevated surfaces. Now, could you tell us about the eruption?
It was horrible. The ground was kind of shaking. There was this huge color rash. I watched as my town was surrounded by a ring of fire. Next thing you know, poof, I died. Mentally speaking.
The Ring of Fire is really a large area in southwest North America where a lot of volcanoes are. But anyway, what did the lava flow look like? Was it fast, slow, thick, liquidy? Also, what did the volcano's shape look like?
Fast, deadly, but silent. Talk about silent but deadly. The volcano looked like a crater like those on the moon. when rocks fall on the earth and destroy. Oh, the destruction. No one saw it coming either. I heard nothing for a while.
Well, it's probably just a dormant volcano. Dormant means that it erupts sometimes and not all the time. When it erupts all the time, it's called an active volcano, and when it doesn't erupt at all, it's called an extinct volcano. And it must have been a quiet eruption. If it looks like a crater, then it may have been a shield volcano. There are 3 types of volcanoes: shield, composite, and cinder cone.
What's the difference between the 3 of them?
Different eruptions. Cinder cone volcanoes have explosive eruptions, which mean the silica and viscosity is high. Then there's composite volcanoes eruptions. They can have both quiet or explosive eruptions. And cinder cone volcanoes have explosive, and like cinder cone volcanoes, composite volcanoes can also have side vents and layers of ash and lava.
What are side vents?
Side vents are one of the few parts of a volcano. The main parts are the pipe, vent, magma chamber, and the crater. The magma chamber is where the lava starts as magma, and then gases push it up through the pipe and through the vent and over the crater. When the eruption is explosive, lava sometimes comes out of the sides of a volcano, and those are side vents.
But both magma and lava are dry. So what if it's dry while in the side?
Well, it depends on how it dries. If vertically, then it's called a dike, and if horizontally, it's called a sill.
Did the death I know that burnt my house have them?
No, yours was a shield volcano, which means it also didn't have a pyroclastic flow.
Pyroclastic. What?
A pyroclastic flow. It's a fast-moving black cloud of dust that no one can breathe through. It's filled with rock fragments, ash, gas, and lava. Now, about shield volcanoes. Shield volcanoes have low viscosity and low silica content, which means that the lava flow is quick. They commonly look like upside-down bowls or craters you may see on the moon. The sides are gently sloping, and the lava flow looks the same as if someone would be pouring water down a driveway. Shield volcanoes can also only make quiet eruptions where the lava is called pahoehoe.
Pahoehoe? Sounds like something a farmer would say.
Well, yes, the name is rather strange. Pahoehoe is lava with low silica and low viscosity.
What name does explosive ones have?
Glad you asked. They contain aa. Aa is lava with high viscosity and high silica.
Another silly name. Though this one is more like alphabet soup.
Well, let's not try to make too much fun of them. Now, I have a question. Did you see what kind of rock it produced?
Yes, it was as dark as night. There were sharp edges that could make you bleed. It was shiny and smooth. They could kill. Kill, I say!
Well, then, it was probably just obsidian. Shield volcanoes make obsidian after the lava cools.
What do others make?
Explosive eruptions make pumice. So what was it like after the eruption?
Ash. Ash everywhere. They're on the trees, they're on my house, they're even on my tire swing.
We're running out of time, so any questions before we go?
Yeah, I brought a picture with me. Mommy told me to ask you what it is. So, what is it?
Oh, that's a cauldron. It's a cauldron-like volcanic feature that is normally formed by the collapse of land following a volcanic eruption. Do you have another picture?
Yes. Could you tell me what it is?
Sure, that's an island arc. It's a string of islands that result from a volcanic eruption. Anything else?
Yes. What's geothermal activity?
Geothermal activity is an energy source that can make energy for heat. A hot spring is a good example for heat. It's a body of water that's heated by hot rocks. A geyser is used for energy. A geyser is a fountain of water and stream that is released by pressure in a narrow crack. Anything else?
Nope.
Well then, I think we're going to head on back to Raoul and Will now. Any last words?
To anyone who has suffered a volcanic eruption, I'm sorry your food is gone. I'm sorry there's no more cheese for you. I'm sorry your stuffed animals are burned down. But as this awesome woman has said, shield volcanoes may be tiny, short, and look like bowls, but they can destroy lands and make others suffer. Perhaps not you, but others. Oh yeah, and our house burned down in the fire, for it was deadly, dangerous, and it will kill. Run before it takes you too. Oh, and hi Mom, I'm on TV.
Hey then. Well, thanks for those, words of wisdom. Anyway, back to you, Raoul and Will.
Thanks, Maya and Coco. It's awesome that we had a person that actually witnessed the earthquake and that Nepal had an earthquake rated a 7.8. That was some cool information.
I agree. We learned about volcanoes and earthquakes from true witnesses, volcanologists, and seismologists. What could be better? Any final words? I was never a fan of science, but this has turned the tables.
Yes! Who knew volcanoes could be so complicated? There's so many parts to it, like magma chambers, pipes, vents, and more. The excitement is too much for me to handle.
Yeah, same for